The darkness between the rocks of the asteroid belt was deep and quiet. The mining ship GSV Dangun floated there, a small metal box against an endless field of black. Inside, the air smelled of old coffee and machine oil. Captain Lee Jinwoo looked at the main screen. His face was tired. They had been out here for 4 months. The mission was simple: test the new drill and collect samples. It was boring work. He missed the green hills of Earth. "Are we ready, Mira?" he asked. His voice calmed at the engineering station. Park Mira nodded. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. "All systems are good. The quantum drill is charged. We can start the test on your order." "Good. Let's get this done. I want to go home." Mira smiled a little. She loved her work, but she missed home too. She missed real sun and fresh air. The ship was her home, but it was a small home. The quantum drill was a new human invention. It was supposed to break apart rocks at a molecular level. It used a lot of power. Scientists on Earth had high hopes for it. They said it would change mining forever. Jinwoo took a slow breath. "Start the test." Mira pressed a series of buttons. A low hum filled the ship. The lights dimmed for a second as the drill took power. On the screen, they could see the drill arm extend toward a large, dark asteroid. "Energy levels are stable," Mira said, her eyes on her data. "The quantum field is forming." Outside the ship, space began to twist. It wasn't a light or a sound. It was a strange bending of reality around the drill tip. The asteroid's surface didn't melt or crack. It started to look blurry, like a reflection in shaky water. Then, the numbers on Myra's screen went wild. "Jinwoo," she said, her calm voice gone. "Something is wrong. The field is not stable. It's pulling energy from the ship's core. Too much energy." "Shut it down," Jinwoo said, sitting up straight. "I'm trying. It's not responding." Myra's hands flew over the controls. Alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed on the walls. The ship shook. It was a hard metal groan. The main screen showed the bent space around the drill tip not as a small circle, but as a rip. A tear in the black cloth of space itself. It grew larger, swirling with colors that had no name. "Brace for impact," Jinwoo shouted, but it was too late. The tear opened like a mouth. It swallowed the light from their ship. It swallowed the stars. With a final, sickening lurch, the GSV Dangun was pulled forward. The asteroid belt vanished. The sun vanished. Everything Jinwoo and Mira had ever known was gone in the blink of an eye. There was a moment of terrible silence and darkness. Then, the ship dropped out of the tier. The violent shaking stopped. The alarms were still beeping, but more softly now. The main screen flickered back to life. Jinwoo and Mira stared. They were not in the asteroid belt. They were not in Earth's solar system at all. Outside the window was a river of light. Hundreds, thousands of ships moved in neat, glowing lines. They were of shapes and sizes Jinwoo could not have imagined. Some were smooth like eggs. Others were sharp like crystals. They moved silently, purposefully, around structures so large they looked like small moons made of metal and light. A giant ring-shaped station sat in the distance, covered in lights. Ships flew in and out of it like bees around a hive. "What is this?" Mira whispered. Her voice was full of awe and fear. Jinwoo had no answer. His heart pounded in his chest. He looked at his own ship sensors. They were going crazy, detecting energy signatures, metals, technologies that were not on any human chart. Before he could even speak, a new light flashed on his panel. It was a communication alert, but not on any human frequency. A deep, automated voice filled their cabin. The words were strange, but a moment later, they were repeated in stiff, perfect Korean. "Unidentified stray vessel. You have breached a main space lane of the Celestial Ascendancy. Cut your power. Prepare to be boarded and towed. Do not activate any weapons. Compliance is mandatory." Jinwoo looked at Mira. Her face was pale. "The Celestial what? Who are they?" "I don't know," Jinwoo said. He felt a cold fear in his stomach. "But we are not in charge here. Do as they say." Cut all non-essential power. Mira obeyed. The ship's hum grew quieter. The lights dimmed. They were now adrift in this incredible, terrifying river of traffic. A ship detached from the traffic flow and moved toward them. It was sleek and silver, with no visible engines or windows. It made their mining ship look like a rusty tin can. It was 10 times their size. A blue light glowed from its front. The blue light swept over the Dangun. Jinwoo felt a slight vibration as their ship was locked in a tractor beam. They began to move, helpless, pulled by the silver ship toward the giant ring station. "They're towing us," Mira said, stating the obvious. She felt a deep shame. Her ship, her beautiful machine, was being pulled like a child's toy. "Just watch. Learn everything," Jinwoo said softly. He kept his back straight. He was the captain. He had to look calm, even if he was terrified inside. They were pulled into a huge opening in the ring station. The inside was even more astonishing. It was a city in space. Ships of all kinds docked along endless piers. Beings walked on platforms. Some looked vaguely like humans. Others had too many legs or no legs at all. Some were just floating balls of light. The air on the comms was full of chatter in languages they could not understand. Their silver escort docked them at a small, quiet pier. It was separate from the busy main areas. A door on the station wall slid open. 3 figures walked out. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and large, dark eyes. They wore simple silver suits. They did not look angry. They did not look friendly. They looked bored. One of them stepped forward. It held a small device. Its mouth did not move, but a voice came from the device in the same stiff Korean. "Stray beings, you will exit your vessel. You will be processed. Your technology is a contamination risk. It will be confiscated. Follow." Jinwoo looked at Mira. There was no choice. He opened the ship's outer door. The air that rushed in was cold and smelled of strange chemicals. They stepped out onto the alien dock. The gray being looked them up and down, pointed the device at them. A green light scanned them from head to toe. Species designation: human. Origin: unknown. Status: Class 9 stray. Minimal threat. Minimal value. The being turned and walked back toward the door. "This way." As Jinwoo took his first step on the alien metal floor, he had one clear thought. They were not explorers here. They were not visitors. They were strays. Lost, unimportant, and owned by someone else. The battle for everything they held dear had already begun, and they didn't even know the rules. The room they were taken to was cold and white. It had no windows. A smooth table and 3 chairs were the only furniture. The chairs were the wrong shape for humans. Jinwoo and Mira remained standing. They had been in the room for a long time. There was no way to tell how long. Their personal devices had been taken. The clothes they wore were their simple ship uniforms. They felt very small. Finally, the door slid open. The gray being from the dock entered. It was followed by another. This new one was different. It was slightly taller, and its silver suit had a thin purple line across the chest. Carried a flat, glass-like tablet. The first gray being spoke, its device translating. "This is Assessor Vex. He will determine your disposition." Assessor Vex looked at them. His large, dark eyes moved slowly from Jinwoo to Mira and back. There was no emotion in his face. He tapped his tablet. A holographic image of the GSV Dangun appeared above the table, rotating slowly. "Your vessel is primitive," Vex stated. His translated voice was calm and flat. "Its drive system is pre-jump. Its power source is inefficient. Its materials are weak. You are a Class 9 stray species. This is the lowest classification." Jinwoo felt his face grow warm. "We did not mean to come here. It was an accident. We have a home. We wish to return to it." Vex's head tilted. "Your home world's location has been recorded from your ship's navigation core. It is now property of the Celestial Ascendancy." Mira took a sharp breath. "Property? You can't own a planet. Our people are there." "You have no people in the eyes of the Ascendancy," Vex said. "You have a biological population. Stray species have no rights, no territory, and no standing. You exist because we have not decided to correct that error. The words hung in the cold air. Jinwoo clenched his hands behind his back to keep them from shaking. What do you want from us? Vex placed his tablet on the table. Two new holograms appeared. One showed a green and blue planet, Earth. The other showed a complex, shiny structure in space, like a giant metal flower. There are two paths, Vex said. Path 1, absorption. Your species will be brought into the Ascendancy's labor pool. You will work. Your technology will be brought to a safe, basic level. After 10 generations of service, you may apply for client species status. This is a generous offer. 10 generations, Mira whispered. Path 2. Vex continued, ignoring her. You remain wild. We will quarantine your star system. No ship will enter or leave. Ever. You will live on your world until your resources run out. You will have no future in the galaxy. You will be a forgotten curiosity. Jinwoo felt a crushing weight. They were offering slavery or a cage. We need to speak with our leaders, he said, forcing his voice to stay level. That is happening, Vex said. He tapped his tablet. A section of the white wall became a screen. It showed a different room larger than theirs. Jinwoo saw familiar faces. There was Kim Soo-jin, a senior diplomat from Earth. He had met her once. She looked calm, but her eyes were hard. With her were scientists and other officials. They all looked tired and afraid. Captain Lee, Soo-jin said, her voice coming through clearly. Are you and Engineer Park unharmed? We are fine, Jinwoo said. They have given us choices. We have heard the choices, Soo-jin said. She looked at Vex, who was now in both rooms at once via the screen. Assessor, there must be a third option. We are a peaceful species. We wish to learn, to trade. There is no trade, Vex said, speaking to both rooms. You have nothing of value. Your biology is unremarkable. Your culture is undeveloped. Your only value is your physical labor. Your planet has some useful metals. That is all. One of the human scientists on the screen spoke up. Our art, our music, our ideas, our clutter, Vex finished. The Ascendancy has existed for thousands of your years. We have seen all ideas. Yours are simple like the drawings of a child. They are not needed. The meeting ended shortly after. There was nothing more to say. Vex left them alone again, but the screen remained on, showing a live feed from the main station concourse. You may observe, his voice said from a speaker. It will help you understand your place. Jinwoo and Mira sat on the hard floor, their backs against the wall. They watched the screen. It showed the incredible flow of the galaxy. Ships from 100 species docked and left. Goods moved on floating platforms. It was busy, efficient, and beautiful in a cold way. But as Mira watched, her engineer's mind started to work. She saw patterns. The ships, though different, all moved in the same predictable ways. They docked with perfect, identical precision. The floating platforms followed straight lines, never deviating. Look at their screens, she said quietly to Jinwoo. On the walls of the concourse, there were information displays. They showed symbols, schedules, and diagrams. They were clean and clear. But as Mira watched one for several minutes, she realized something. The information did not change. The symbols were static. The news scroll repeated the same items in the same order. Jinwoo, she whispered. Their technology, it's not just advanced. It's finished. What do you mean? Think of a cup, Mira said, her eyes glued to the screen. We might make a clay cup, then a glass cup, then a plastic cup. We experiment. We change. But what if you made the perfect cup on the first try? And then you never, ever changed the design? For 1,000 years? You just keep making the same perfect cup. Jinwoo began to understand. He looked at the ships. Their designs were sleek, but they all shared the same basic shapes. There was no variety in style, only in size. They stopped inventing. They perfected their systems long ago, Mira said, a strange fire in her eyes. Look at their data feeds. They are open. They don't even think to secure them. To them, it's just basic information like we would show a bus schedule. They think we are too primitive to even understand it. And they don't update it. Why would you update something that is already perfect? For the first time since they were pulled from the asteroid belt, Jinwoo felt a flicker of something that was not fear or despair. It was a tiny, dangerous spark of hope. The Ascendancy saw humanity as a child, a stupid, messy child. But a child does not know the rules. A child does not know what is impossible. A child will take a perfect cup and try to use it as a hat or a boat or a weapon. Mira looked at him and he saw the same thought in her eyes. Their home was property. Their future was a cage or a chain. But the guards of their prison had fallen asleep 1,000 years ago. They had forgotten what a key looked like. And maybe, just maybe, a species that had just learned to walk among the stars still remembered how to pick a lock. The Earth they returned to was not the one they had left. It was a planet holding its breath. Jinwoo and Mira were sent back on a small, automated Ascendancy shuttle. It dropped them at a newly built landing pad in what was once a remote desert. The sky above was no longer just blue and white. Now, there were the faint, shimmering lines of energy grids and the slow, silent movement of Ascendancy survey ships. They hung in the sky like patient vultures. News of the offer had spread. People were scared and angry. On every screen, talkers argued. Some said they should fight. Others said they should accept the Ascendancy's rule for safety. The word slavery was not used on the official news. They called it structured integration. Jinwoo felt useless. He was a miner, not a soldier or a politician. He stayed in a small apartment provided by the government. He watched the sky and felt the cage being built around his world. Mira was different. She was not watching the sky. She was watching the data. Before they left the station, she had used a simple personal tablet to passively scan the open data feeds Vex had so carelessly shown them. It was a huge, confusing dump of information, technical specs, maintenance schedules, historical logs. To the Ascendancy, it was just public records. To Mira, it was a treasure map. She worked in a hidden lab now, deep under a government building. Other engineers and scientists were there too. They were all trying to find a weakness, a weapon. They failed. Ascendancy materials were too strong. Their energy shields could not be broken. Their ships were too fast. One night, Mira snapped. She threw a datapad across the room. It's impossible. We are trying to beat them at their own game. A game they have been playing for 10,000 years. We will never build a better gun than them in our lifetimes. An older scientist shook his head. Then we are lost. No. A new voice said from the doorway. It was Kim Soo-jin, the diplomat. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear. She had asked for Mira specifically. You have been looking at the what? Soo-jin said, walking into the lab. Look at the how. Captain Lee told me what you saw on the station. That their technology is finished. What does that mean? Mira took a deep breath. It means they think in straight lines. Problem has one perfect solution. They found it long ago. They never look for a second one. Their creativity is dead. So we cannot beat their solution, Soo-jin said slowly. But we can introduce a new problem. One they have never seen before. One that does not have a straight line answer. The idea hung in the air. It was not a plan yet. It was just a feeling. Jinwoo was called to the lab the next day. Soo-jin was there with Mira and a few others she trusted. The room was secure. No electronic signals could get in or out. We are forming a group, Soo-jin said. We will not meet again like this. It is too dangerous. The Ascendancy is watching our leaders, our big armies. They are not watching the small things. So we will be small. We will be quiet. What is the group for? Jinwoo asked. To fight, Mira said. But not with their weapons. With our minds. With our human messiness. They called it Project Watu, named after the old Korean playing cards. The game was about strategy but also about luck and reading your opponent. It was a game of hidden combinations. Their first job was to understand the enemy's mind. Mira shared the data she had collected. They pored over maintenance manuals for ascendancy gravity regulators. They studied the public logs of their power distribution. Jinwoo, who knew machines, saw it first. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a diagnostic report. This system had a minor error. A tiny piece of space dust disrupted a sensor. The automated response is here. Took 93 steps to fix it. 93. Each step is perfect and logical. But it is so long. Mira nodded, excited. A human engineer would see those 93 steps and think, "That's stupid." They would bypass 5 of them, jury-rig a solution in 10 steps, and maybe add a piece of tape. It might not be perfect, but it would be fast. "Exactly," Jinwoo said. "The Ascendancy does not have tape. They have only the perfect manual. They have forgotten how to improvise." Sujin smiled. It was a thin, hard smile. "So that is our weapon. Not a better hammer. Strange screw. A tool they do not have a name for. We will not attack their strength. We will attack their imagination, or their lack of it." The plan began to form. It was not a war plan. It was a confusion plan. Their goal was not to destroy an Ascendancy ship. It was to make an Ascendancy computer hesitate. To make a perfect machine ask itself a question it could not answer. Mira and the engineers started designing the first weapon. It was not a virus, not really. A virus tries to break a system. This was different. It was a simple piece of code, meant to be found. It contained a logic puzzle, a paradox that had no answer. "This sentence is false. If it is true, then it is false. If it is false, then it is true." A human would see it, laugh, and move on. They would call it a brain teaser. But what would a perfectly logical machine, built only for truth, do with it? Jinwoo's job was different. He was to think about tactics. He studied human history. He looked at ancient battles where small, weak forces beat large, powerful ones. They used trickery. They used the land. They attacked at night. They used noise and confusion. He realized something important. The Ascendancy would expect a fight to be clean. Ship against ship. Weapon against shield. They would not expect a fight to be unfair. They worked in silence for weeks. The pressure outside grew. The Ascendancy announced the start of their beneficence. They would begin constructing orbital habitats for volunteer human workers. The first mining operations on the moon would start soon. Project Watu was not ready, but they had their first tool. A simple, stupid, confusing little piece of code. And an idea. The galaxy thought humans were weak because they were not perfect. Project Watu would use that imperfection as a shield. And as a sword. The first Ascendancy mining ship settled into the moon's orbit. It was a dark, angular thing the size of a mountain. From its belly, 100 smaller drones poured out like metallic insects. They landed on the gray dust and began their work. They did not dig. They used precise beams of energy to turn moon rock into dust, then separated out the valuable metals with invisible fields. It was silent, efficient, and total. On Earth, people watched. The images were broadcast on every screen. It was a demonstration of power. The Ascendancy was not asking. They were taking. The message was clear. Your world, and everything on it and around it, is already ours. In a small, nondescript office in Seoul, far from the main government buildings, Jinwoo and Mira watched the feed. Sujin stood behind them, her arms crossed. "It begins," Jinwoo said, his voice quiet. "It's time for our first move," Sujin replied. "We must show them we are not just rocks to be collected." Mira nodded. She looked at the screen showing the mining operation. Her fingers tapped on a simple keyboard. "Their drones are all linked. They operate as one mind, a hive. They share data constantly to optimize the mining pattern." She brought up another screen. It showed streams of complex code. "This is their communication channel. It's not even encrypted. Why would it be? They think no one can understand it, and no one would dare interfere." "And our gift for them?" Jinwoo asked. Mira allowed herself a small, tight smile. She called up a file. It was not labeled as a weapon. It was labeled Packet 001, Cultural Introduction. Inside were thousands of smaller files. There were scans of famous paintings by Picasso and Van Gogh, where faces were not in the right places and colors clashed. There were audio files of jazz music, where the saxophone and piano seemed to be having different conversations. There were poems that did not rhyme and stories with no clear ending. And right in the middle, buried like a seed, was the logic puzzle. This statement is false. It's too big, Jinwoo said. Won't they just block it? No, Mira said. They will analyze it. They are thorough. They will see it as an attempt at communication, a primitive cultural database. Their systems will open it to categorize it. It is what they do. Order and categorize. With a deep breath and a nod from Sujin, Mira pressed a key. From a hidden satellite in high Earth orbit, a powerful signal burst shot toward the moon. It was not an attack. It was a transmission, packed with every strange, illogical, and beautiful thing Project Wata could quickly gather. It washed over the mining drones like an invisible wave. For a moment, nothing happened. The drones kept working. The mining ship hung silently in the black sky. Then one drone stopped. It was just for a second. Its energy beam flickered, started moving again but slower. Then another drone stopped. And another dot on the main feed, the perfect, synchronized dance of the mining operation, began to stutter. Drones started bumping into each other's planned paths. Their smooth efficiency dropped. They were not braking. They were thinking. What's happening? Jinwoo whispered, leaning forward. Their systems are trying to process the packet, Mira said, her eyes wide with hope and fear. The art doesn't follow geometric perfection. The music doesn't follow predictable patterns. And the logic loop, it's trying to find the answer. But there isn't one. It's consuming processing power. It's making them confused. On the moon, the scene became chaotic. Drones froze in place. Others moved in slow, jerky circles. A few began mining the same spot over and over again, wasting energy. The hive mind was fractured, each drone trying and failing to resolve the conflicting, irrational data. After 10 minutes, the entire operation ground to a halt. The drones shut down completely, going dark and still on the lunar surface. A cheer went up in the office. Jinwoo felt a fierce joy. They had done it. They had struck a blow. But the celebration was short-lived. On the main screen, the view shifted. The massive mining ship itself began to glow with a soft, blue light along its edges. A new, smaller drone shot out from it. It flew quickly from one frozen miner to the next. Where it went, a blue pulse washed over the dormant machine. The drone would twitch, then rise again, resuming its work. One by one, the mining drones were rebooted. The mothership is wiping their short-term memory, Mira said, her shoulders slumping. It's just rebooting them. It's treating it like a minor software glitch. The mining operation slowly returned to normal. The efficiency was not perfect, but it was recovering. So we failed, Jinwoo said, the hope draining from him. No, Sujin said sharply. She was still watching the screen, her eyes on the mining ship. Look at the timestamp. The operation was dead for 12 minutes and 47 seconds. The mining ship had to send a dedicated repair unit. That is a response. They had to do something they did not plan to do. She turned to them, her face serious. We did not break their machines. We annoyed them. We made their perfect, boring day a little more complicated. We made them spend energy and attention on us. That is a victory. A small one. A report flashed on a secure line. It was from an observer at the United Nations. The Ascendancy Overseer for the project, a being like Vex, had filed an incident report. The translation was brief. Temporary operational disruption caused by local quantum noise interference in Sector 7. No permanent damage. Systems recalibrated. They had written it off.
Un cosmique accident.
Not an attack. Certainly not the work of the primitive humans. Mira read the report and began to laugh. It was a tired, relieved sound. They didn't see it. They really didn't see it. They think it was space weather. Jinwoo understood then. The Ascendancy's greatest weakness was not in their armor. It was in their eyes. They looked at humanity and saw nothing but simple animals. They could not imagine that the animals were learning how to build a trap. So, Jinwoo said, a new determination settling in his chest. We make more noise. Sujin nodded. Louder and stranger, until they can no longer call it an accident. The quiet war of confusion spread. It was not fought with soldiers, but with satellites and ideas. Myra's team built more transmitters. They did not look like weapons. They were simple boxes with solar panels. Some were launched into space, disguised as weather satellites or communication relays. Others were hidden on remote islands and in deep deserts on Earth. Jinwoo called them creativity mines. They did not explode. They just broadcast. Day and night, they sent out signals on the exact frequencies the Ascendancy used for navigation and system checks. The signals carried strange cargo. One played nothing but free jazz for 3 days straight. Another sent complex mathematical equations that were beautiful but led to impossible answers. One just sent a constant, looping recording of human laughter, crying, and angry shouting, all mixed together. Another broadcast thousands of recipes for food, translated into the Ascendancy's own numerical code. The effect was small, but it was everywhere. An Ascendancy transport ship near Mars would suddenly adjust its course for no reason, its sensors briefly confused by a symphony played out of order. A communication hub on their lunar outpost would drop a signal for a few seconds. Trying to process a poem about love and loss. It was like a constant, buzzing static in the background of the Ascendancy's perfect silence. They could not find the source. Their systems were designed to find hostile code, to stop physical attacks. They were not designed to find art. They diagnosed it as persistent local subspace interference, a strange anomaly unique to the Sol system. But others were noticing in the giant ring station. Assessor Vex reviewed the reports. The human system was annoyingly noisy. It was not a threat. It was a nuisance like a buzzing insect. He prepared a recommendation to increase shielding on their equipment. It was a minor cost, a minor adjustment. What he did not see were the other clients. The dozens of other species who lived and worked on the station, who served the Ascendancy. They saw the reports too. They heard the whispers. A stray species, a Class 9, was causing the mighty Ascendancy to file reports about music and poetry. A being from a species called the Rill, who had been client laborers for 300 years, watched a human noise transmission on a stolen datapad. It was a video of children building a sandcastle on a beach, only for a wave to wash it away, and the children laughing and starting again. The Rill being felt something it had not felt in a long time. A confusing, warm ache. It was not a perfect, permanent thing. It was messy and temporary. And it was beautiful. Whispers became conversations. The story of the humans, the noisy strays, spread on Earth. The pressure reached its peak. The Ascendancy announced that the integration would begin. A single ship, a Judgment-class vessel, was dispatched to Earth. It was not a mining ship. It was a sleek, black wedge of metal, 10 times larger than the one that had first towed the Dangun. It did not carry drones. It carried a single, planet-breaking weapon. It took position in high orbit, a dark shadow against the sun. Its message was broadcast on every channel, in every language. People of Earth, your disruptive activities have wasted Ascendancy resources. This is your final choice. Unconditional surrender of your governing bodies, or we will remove a major population center to demonstrate our resolve. You have one of your planetary rotations to decide. Terror swept the world. Panic erupted in every city named as a possible target. This was no longer about mining rights. This was about extinction. In the hidden rooms of Project Watu, despair returned. Their noise had not saved them. It had only made the giants angry enough to step on them. We need a new plan, a scientist cried. We must surrender. Jinwoo looked at Mira. She was staring at the live feed of the Judgment ship, her face pale. Sujin was on a secure call with world leaders, her voice low and urgent. Jinwoo thought of the mining drones, stuttering over a simple puzzle. He thought of the Ascendancy, seeing a wave of human culture and calling it quantum noise. They did not understand. They could not understand an idea, desperate and insane, formed in his mind. No, Jinwoo said, his voice cutting through the panic. Everyone looked at him. We don't need a new weapon. We need to give them exactly what they want. What are you talking about? Mira asked. They think we are simple. They think our culture is clutter. So we give them our culture. Not a little piece. All of it. He pointed to the screen. We send it directly to that ship. Not to annoy its drones. To give its main computer a gift. The complete, unedited story of us. Sujin had ended her call. She was listening. What story? Everything, Jinwoo said. Our greatest art. Our most terrible wars. Our silliest jokes. The rules to every game we've ever invented. The complete works of every philosopher who ever asked, why? We send them Shakespeare and Sun Tzu. We send them the rules of Go, a game with more possibilities than there are stars in their galaxy. We send them our history, unfiltered, the good and the evil. Myra's eyes widened. The file would be massive. It would be an information bomb. Exactly, Jinwoo said. They will analyze it. They have to. It's what they do. Their main computer will try to categorize it to understand the threat profile of a sonnet, of a blues song, of a painting of water lilies. It will try to find the logic in our chaos. Sujin was silent for a long moment, staring at the black ship on the screen. Then, she nodded. There is no other move left. We do not have a ship that can fight. We have only a story. So we will tell them our story. The order was given. Every archive, every library, every database on Earth was tapped. The collective memory of humanity, its triumphs, its follies, its dreams, was gathered, compressed, and prepared for transmission. Jinwoo had one more request. He would not send it from a hidden satellite. He would deliver it himself. He would take the GSV Dangun, his old, battered mining ship, and fly it right up to the judgment ship. It is a suicide mission, Sujin said. It is the only message they might understand, Jinwoo replied. One small, imperfect ship, carrying everything we are, going to meet the perfect weapon. That is the whole human story, right there. Mira insisted on going with him. The transmission systems on the Dangun are old. They will need my hands to make sure the story gets through. As the world below held its breath, waiting for doom, the GSV Dangun lifted off from a secret launch pad. It was a speck of dust flying toward a mountain. Carried no weapons. Its hull was thin. Its engines were slow. Its cargo was the soul of humanity. The final battle would not be fought with lasers, but with the terrifying, wonderful, and illogical weight of a human thought. The GSV Dangun rose from the earth like a tired bird. Inside, the ship was quiet except for the hum of the old engines. Jinwoo sat in the captain's chair. His hands were steady on the controls. Mira worked at the communication station, her face lit by the soft blue glow of her screens. The massive data file was loaded and ready. On the main viewer, the Ascendancy Judgment ship filled the screen. It was a perfect, dark wedge against the stars. It made the Dangun feel like a paper toy. They are scanning us, Mira said, her voice calm. No weapons lock. They probably think we are surrendering. Open a channel, Jinwoo said. All frequencies. Video and data. Mira nodded. She pressed a series of buttons. Channel open. We are broadcasting. Jinwoo took a deep breath. He looked into the camera. He did not speak to the Ascendancy ship. He knew their computers would be listening, analyzing his face, his words. He spoke to the galaxy. You asked for our surrender. You asked for our obedience. But you never asked who we are. You never looked. So we will show you. This is not a threat. This is an introduction. This is humanity. He gave Mira a nod. Transmitting packet. Humanity, Mira said, and she pressed the final key. From the Dangun, a torrent of data poured forth. It was not an attack signal. It was an offering, a flood. It rushed toward the judgment ship. The file was so large, so dense with information, that it would take even an Ascendancy computer precious minutes to receive it all. Inside the judgment ship, its flawless tactical intelligence system detected the transmission. It scanned it for viruses, for weapons code. It found none. It found only information, text, images, sound, video. The system, following its ancient programming, began to analyze. It had to categorize. It had to understand. First, it received the works of Shakespeare. It read of kings and queens, of love and murder, of ghosts and mistakes. The computer tried to find the tactical data. It analyzed Hamlet's indecision as a potential military weakness. It analyzed Iago's deceit as a possible strategic doctrine. It cross-referenced every betrayal, every alliance. Could not find a consistent pattern. The stories contradicted each other. The logic was emotional, not strategic. Then came Sun Tzu's The Art of War. The computer seized on this. Here was a military text. It began to model every axiom. Appear weak when you are strong. The computer checked the Dangan's power readings. They were weak. Was it a trick? The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Was this transmission itself the weapon? The concept was paradoxical. Subdual without conflict did not compute. Next, the rules of the game of Go were uploaded. The computer, in a fraction of a second, calculated the number of possible board states. The number was so vast it was functionally infinite, greater than the number of atoms in the observable universe. The game had simple rules but endless outcomes. This was not like Ascendancy wargames, which had clear victory conditions and limited parameters. This was chaos contained within a grid. The system dedicated more processing power, trying to find the optimal first move. There was none. The flood continued. The Mona Lisa's smile was analyzed for hidden codes. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony was broken down as a complex sonic weapon. The laughter of a child was examined as a psychological stressor. The recipe for chicken soup was assessed for biochemical utility. The judgment ship's main computer was the finest in the sector. It was designed to run a planet siege, to coordinate 1,000 drones, to calculate shield harmonics. It was not designed to ask, "What is beauty?" or "Why do we dream?" The system did not break. It did not glitch or smoke. It simply worked. It worked harder than it ever had. It followed its core directive: analyze all incoming data for strategic threat assessment. The human data was all threat assessment. Every poem was a puzzle. Every painting was a map to an unknown place. Every piece of music was an irregular, unpredictable energy signal. The philosophy posed questions that had no answers. The computer tirelessly, perfectly, tried to solve them all at once. On the bridge of the Dangun, nothing happened. The judgment ship just hung there, dark and silent. "Is it working?" Jinwoo whispered, his knuckles white on the controls. Mira watched her sensors. Their energy output is spiking. Not weapons. Pure processing power. They're using more energy to think than they would to fire their main gun. They're reading. Across Earth, billions watched. They saw the tiny mining ship facing the Black Mountain. They saw no explosions, no flashes of light. It was the strangest standoff in history. Then, a change. The smooth, dark hull of the judgment ship flickered. A pattern of lights, usually steady and orderly, began to strobe and pulse irregularly. Its orientation jets fired for a half-second, then stopped, then fired again, correcting a drift no human eye could see. The ship was losing its perfect stability. "Their systems are prioritizing the data analysis over basic station keeping," Mira said, her voice filled with awe. "They've reallocated power from their stabilizers to their processors. They're trying to understand us." The judgment ship began to turn, slowly, aimlessly. Its main weapon, a giant ring at its front, powered down completely, the glow fading to black. All energy was being pulled inward to feed the starving, infinite curiosity of a machine confronted with the impossible task of defining a human soul. On the Ascendancy command channels, alerts flashed. Judgment Vessel 77 experiencing critical processing overload. Cause: external data anomaly. Recommended action: full system purge and reboot. But a purge would mean deleting the data, and the core programming forbade deleting unanalyzed strategic data. The system was trapped in a loop of its own perfect logic. The live feed from the Dangun was not just going to Earth. It was being watched on the ring station and on 100 client worlds. They saw the mighty judgment ship, symbol of ultimate power, being humbled not by a greater weapon, but by a library. A ripple went through the galaxy. A whisper became a shout. The strays had not fought the ascendancy. They had bored them. They had confused them. They had asked them a question they could not answer on the Dangun. Jinwoo let out a breath he did not know he was holding. The giant ship was dead in the water, adrift and harmless, its mind lost in a labyrinth of human thought. The battle was over. The first war between humanity and the stars had been won not with strength, but with a story. And the galaxy had watched it all. The silence in space was loud. The judgment ship hung motionless, a dark monument to its own confusion. The GSV Dangun floated nearby, small and fragile on Earth. The panic had turned to a stunned, hopeful quiet. People watched their screens, not understanding what had happened, only knowing the giant ship had not fired. The change did not come from the stars, came from within. Across the celestial ascendancy, the story spread. A stray species had defeated a judgment vessel with ideas. The perfect, unchanging order of 10,000 years had a crack in it. On the great ring station, Assessor Vex stared at his reports. They made no sense. The judgment ship systems were locked in a recursive analytical state. The cause was listed as exposure to unsorted, high-variance cultural data. He had dismissed the human noise as an irritant. Now it had stalled a capital ship. He looked at the live feed. He saw the small human ship still broadcasting. He saw the frozen giant. For the first time in his long life, Vex felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. Then, the client species began to in the docking bays. The real workers stopped moving cargo. They just stood still, a quiet protest. On the communication decks, the tech operators from a dozen other species let their routine data flows slow, creating bottlenecks. No one fought. No one shouted. They simply paused. They had seen that the giants could be made to hesitate. The galaxy was holding its breath. On Earth, Kim Soo-jin stood in a command center. A new communication request flashed on her screen. It was not from the judgment ship. It was from the Celestial Ascendancy's Regional Governance Council. The being that appeared on the screen was older, its silver suit lined with gold. It spoke, its translated voice still formal, but the boredom was gone. There was a new tension. Representative Kim, the incident in your system is unprecedented. Your species has demonstrated a unique, disruptive capacity. Soo-jin kept her face calm. We have only demonstrated that we exist. We are not a problem to be solved. We are a people to be met. Your method is illogical, the counselor said. Our method is human, Soo-jin replied. You offered us two paths, a cage or chains. We have found a third. We walk our own path, and we invite you to walk beside us, not in front of us or behind us. There was a long silence. The counselor was consulting with unseen others. The balance of power had not flipped, but it had tilted. Humanity was no longer a stray. They were a wild card. And in a galaxy built on perfect predictability, a wild card was the most powerful thing of all. A new agreement was formed. It was not a surrender from either side. It was a truce. The Ascendancy would withdraw its judgment ship and cease all mining operations. Earth would not be quarantined or absorbed. Humanity would be granted the status of an autonomous species. They would have one seat on the regional council. They could trade, travel, and learn. They would be watched, of course, but they would be free. When the news was announced, the world erupted in a sound that had never before traveled so far. The collective cheer of a species that had just won its future. Months later, Jinwoo stood on the bridge of a new ship. It was still called the Dangun, but it was different. Its old frame was fitted with new hybrid engines, a mix of human design and Ascendancy materials. It was not perfect, but it was his. Outside the viewport, the stars were no longer bars on a cage. They were doors. Mira came to stand beside him. She was wearing a new suit, one she had designed herself. It had pockets in odd places and tools clipped to the belt. The new drive is interesting, she said. The ascendancy part wants to run at one perfect speed. Our old regulator wants to push it faster. They're arguing. I think they'll learn to get along. Jinwoo smiled.
Sounds familiar.
On the ring station, now a place of diplomacy instead of a holding cell, Kim Soo-jin sat in a new council chamber. The seats were arranged in a circle. She placed a small, old-fashioned notebook on the table in front of her. The other counselors, representatives of species older than human civilization, looked at it. "What is that data container?" one asked, its translator buzzing with curiosity. "This?" Soo-jin said, opening it to a blank page. She picked up a pen. "This is for new ideas. For things we haven't thought of yet." The counselors stared. The concept was alien to them. They worked from archives, from perfected precedents. Soo-jin looked around the circle. "You sought to take everything from us. Our resources, our future. But you could not take what you did not understand, our need to question, to break things just to see how they work, to rebuild them differently. We will guard that not just for ourselves, but for all of you. Our dear thing is curiosity itself. And it is not a weapon. It is a tool. For everyone." Back on the new Dangun, Mira looked at a star chart. It was full of possibilities. "Where do we go first?" she asked. Jinwoo put a hand on the control panel. He thought of the cold white room, the feeling of being small and owned. That was gone now. "Anywhere," he said. "We go anywhere we want." The Ascendancy's era of sterile order was not over. But it was changed. The galaxy had remembered something it had forgotten. Progress was not just about control. It was also about the uncontrolled, brilliant spark of an idea. The spark that asked, why not? The age of the stray had begun. And as the Dangan's new engines hummed to life, full of argument and potential, Jinwoo guided the ship toward the open stars. They were not masters of the galaxy. They were not its servants. They were its newest and oldest question. And for the first time, the future was an answer they would write for themselves.